be a dual purpose. We're going to start out talking about what we have done, Jeremy and I have done together, both together for our relationship, but also separately to support each other in our relationship as husband and wife. And then towards the second half of this discussion, we'll chat about, what I just shared, which is, how is Jeremy taking all of this in, like of what I'm doing, this potential of me leaving education and, just diving into different things, right? Just evolving and learning and growing as an entrepreneur. So that is where this is headed. So Jeremy, let's start off with, talking about, I'll share a little bit about what I have done to support the two of us in making our relationship healthier. Specifically since the last time that Jeremy's been on, which was about, if I am remembering correctly, which Jeremy is Rain Man over here. So it's probably about like a year ago at this time. We the last time we spoke to you, both of us on this podcast, we had gone through counseling. And that was really awesome for a relationship. Just really hearing both sides, how we were both feeling. And from that, we've been able to communicate a lot better. We, I think temperament wise, we've been able to understand where each other is coming from more effectively, and to when we get into those times where maybe someone's getting a little bit frustrated, we can realize that, and we can kind of, back off a little bit, so to speak. So we just know our triggers, I think is the way that I'm trying to say that. We know our triggers a little bit better, and we can actively de-escalate a situation before it escalates. So I think that's a great thing. I also think, and I'm going to let you speak to this, because it was really, I think it was your idea to do this. We have a calendar where we write, what's going on for the month. It's a whiteboard dry erase calendar. And typically I was the one writing those things down on the calendar, like for me, what I was doing. But then we had a conversation, and, Jeremy was frustrated that I was not remembering when he was doing certain things. And so then what have we done with that calendar?
It is now a joint calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like the calendar was 100% Kelly, which,
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it being about communication, but if I'm not using it, there's no point of a calendar just being up there for one person.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to incorporate my events on there by letting my wife know, Kelly, that
Mm-hmm.
I was going to start putting things on there. And it's helped. So if there's events that Kelly has forgotten about, she can look up there. Or if I have not put anything up there and then I'm leaving, she goes, well, you didn't put that up there.
Mm-hmm.
And she can call me out on it. And it's not necessarily calling one out on their shit, but it is kind of calling them out on it, because it was my idea. So if I'm not holding myself accountable to it, how can one other person hold themselves accountable to it? So it's a two-way street. We have to make it a team effort at all times. And if we can't, then what's the point?
Yeah. And so I think your thought too was to color code it. So the calendar is color coded. Jeremy has blue and I have the black marker, and we just put up there what we need to. And then that usually helps me to keep in mind what he's doing. Because he's really good at remembering things and I'm not so much. And so it saves me from frustrating him when I say, well, can you do this? Or do we have time for this? And instead of him being like, hey, you remember that I have this thing going on, right? I already know because it's already on the calendar. So I think that's been super helpful in terms of communication, in terms of knowing, what we're doing, because we both lead busy lives, and just knowing what's going on, most of the time. I'm not saying that I'm always the best at it and, you know, remembering everything that he's doing. But if it's up there on the calendar, I am much more apt to remember. Riley, I'm much more apt to remember what he is doing, and then that just, you know, that builds up strength in our relationship because we know what's going on, and it just develops this understanding, this knowing between the two of us. So I think that's been really great. I think we've also just, you know, learned we don't try to appease each other, but we look to understand why each other is feeling the way that we do in certain situations. And I think we've gotten much better at being able to calmly explain how we're feeling in a situation. And if there's something that is bothering us, whether it be, you know, this is something that I know triggers Jeremy, and I'm sure several of you can relate. I have a voice for the dogs, and Jeremy absolutely hates that voice. And it's something that I grew up doing, like with my childhood dog. And so it's really hard for me to stop doing it. And I don't do it intentionally to tick him off. But sometimes there are, you know, days and just moments where he's like, okay, can you not do that voice? You know, most of the time, God bless him, he will put up with it. But there are times where he's like, I just can't listen to that voice today. And so I'm like, you know what? I realize that. Like, I'm like, okay, he is telling me right now in a calm, cool, collected voice, he doesn't like that. So just cut it out. Don't do it. And, you know, respect that he's letting you know that this is frustrating him. Whereas, you know, sometimes previously, before we had developed the communication piece in our relationship to a more sound place to where we're at now, we didn't always, that didn't always happen, right? Sometimes he would just lash out, you know, in terms of being frustrated and say something to me or, you know, yell, and that would make me feel bad, right? Even though I knew it was triggering to him, he would do that thing, and then that would frustrate me. So I think just communication wise, we've gotten a lot better. Is there anything you would want to say, you know, to that?
Communication is everything. And like we first talked about the calendar, but even doing this podcast, for example, Kelly asked me, hey, I'd like to do this after work this last Thursday. Thursday being the 8th. And I said, you know, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm getting sick and I don't really want to do it tonight. Maybe we can do this another day this weekend. Before I would have been like, listen, B, I ain't doing the effing podcast. You can honestly take that podcast and wash it down the toilet. Like it would have been like that. But rather than hit a point where I immediately go to 10, I just said, I'm going to explain it. Now, do I have moments, of course, where I go to 10? Yeah. The best example that I could give is the dandelions and sunflowers and all the good stuff that was in our yard, where Kelly's like, hey, I was driving to school, and when I left, we got to do something about these. And I said, okay, I will take care of it. Good, because it's getting really bad. And this. And I'm like, okay. So I just said I'm going to take care of it. The key thing is I said I was going to take care of it. You know, you just cut to the chase and this and like basically, and she goes, okay, clearly you have an attitude today. And so, and of course after it, but before it would have been like for a whole rest of the day. But instead of it being a whole rest of the day, what did I do after it? I called her and said, no, I need to call you and tell you why I'm like this and explain, hey, it's not you. You're kind of calling me in the middle of a rough situation at work. I work in a warehouse, and, you know, even though I don't do the most physical part of the warehouse, I do more of a numbers aspect of it. It's still demanding, and I feel like I can communicate a lot better, quicker, rather than let it drag out, because before it would have just been like hours before I would have reached out. And now I can kind of, at the end of a 10-minute thing, we can laugh it off. Before it would have been like a 2-day thing where be like, you're sleeping on the couch. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And I wouldn't think anything about it. But now it's
Yeah.
more like, hey, I want to end this. I want to communicate. I want to tell you where my mind's at.
Yeah.
I never wanted to do that before.
Yeah. So I think we've really come, a long way with our communication. And I think the other thing that I noticed about our relationship that has gotten better, that has we've evolved in a good way, is making more intentional time for each other. I think, your job, Jeremy, is, like you said, it's mentally taxing, but you also are working long hours, longer hours than I do during the school year. And so you come home, exhausted, both physically and mentally. And I also come home physically and mentally exhausted from my job. Now, of course, obviously I'm on break this, right now during the summer, but so our schedules do not always align. Like Jeremy works on Saturday and well, I'm home on Saturday, right? So we know that, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday are Jeremy's days off. I know that he needs time to, just be by himself, but also just to, rest too. So I honor that. Like I respect that for him. But at the same time, we both know that it's important to spend time together. So while it may not be an every week thing, that ideally that's what we'd like it to be, right? Is to at least once a week, have some sort of like date night, right? It's not always that, but it's at least spending time together, whether that be, chatting before bed, or, when Jeremy comes home at night, like him, if there's something on his mind about work or something else, chatting about that, having a conversation, whether it be work related or not, about, things that are going on in the world, or, just in our sphere, right? The people that we're connected to, talking about, things that are going on with family or friends. I think sometimes we forget that those things are important too. And you don't always necessarily have to have a scheduled date night, especially, if you're forcing it, then that's not really the best thing to be doing with your time and to really support your relationship if you're forcing things, right, to happen. So I think Jeremy and I both know that we're both doing a lot individually, but we also show up for each other in a big way. Jeremy knows that I'm his number one supporter, and likewise, I know that he's my number one supporter. And so whether we're having a date night or not, we know that we can count on each other, and we know that our relationship doesn't ride on having a date night every week. It is sustained by us communicating and doing so effectively, and being there for one another. And I'm currently in a season, this is kind of segueing us into this next part of our conversation. I currently am in a season, Riker, what in the hell? I am currently in a season where
Just
he's licking
everything.
licking my shirt, licking everything.
Just licking my hand.
I am currently in a season, so scatterbrain here just for a moment. I am currently in a season where I am doing a lot of things, and I'm setting myself up for the next phase, the next potential phase of my life, which is going to look a lot different than it does right now. And Jeremy knows that, and we've had conversations about, the things that I need to do. And do we need to have more conversations about that? Yeah. And will we? Yes. And this is just the beginning phases of those conversations. But Jeremy is clued in on, what I'm going to be doing over the next, year. And he's always been supportive of what I want to do. He knows that it lights me up. He sees how lit up I am by the stuff that I do. And so I think the segue into what we're about to chat about next is that topic of, I'm currently evolving, doing a lot of things, getting to know myself really well in the process, and really busy, I guess, is the way that I want to say that. I'm really busy right now, but like a good busy. And so, Jeremy, I'm curious, what are your thoughts about, all the things that I'm doing, just watching me, I guess, over the past year, and the things that I've taken on, and just like the confidence piece, and, seeing me speak and whatnot at events. What have you noticed about me? How has that impacted you? And just, I guess, really whatever comes to mind for you, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the 180 flip from introvert to extrovert is not all the way complete, but it's pretty darn close. Uh, you have the ability to get others behind you in a way that I don't think 3 years ago was there. Um, and that's important for many because they can see what a truly caring and unique person you are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the one thing that is really special about it is to see the joy it brings you. And that really gets me going because you go, hey, I've got this Zoom at 7:30. I'm going to need you to watch the dogs, make sure they don't come into the room, or I'm on the couch. So if you are going to be doing anything, if you're playing online,
Make sure you're clothed.
and you know what? I'm not even going to deny
Yeah.
whatever, fine.
Yeah.
But like, basically, I was going to say, just don't be cursing, because she like was in the room last night when I was playing online and I was talking shit. Because I usually don't like curse when I play video games, but I usually like, if I'm playing online, I'm cursing, but it's trash talk. And so it's kind of like warnings like that, like, hey, if you're going to do it, keep it to a dull roar. But it's like, it's stuff like that, like where I see how happy she is. And the best was going to Fresno. That was awesome. I was like, when she said, hey, I want you to come, and that was in December. And I was like, oh, me? You want me to come? Like, someone who's, I know I'm your husband, but just be there with a bunch of ladies. And you're like, well, you were like, you won't be there, but it'll still be fun. And it turned out to be fun because I had a blast. I did my own thing.
Yeah.
I actually did my own thing and it was awesome. But like, I stayed, and Kelly was the leadoff hitter for the women's empowerment speaking. And I thought it was awesome. I know Kelly was like, well, it's nerve-wracking. I remember we were talking that morning, we took a walk, and Kelly's like, I'm going first, this fine. Best, you ought to be the leadoff hitter. It's awesome being the leadoff hitter.
Well, yeah, and I think I'm glad you mentioned, that particular example of me speaking, because you were instrumental to that. Like, I had you there recording me while I was speaking, and I mean, the amount of comments that you received, but that I also received after the fact, was like, oh my gosh, like, how incredible that your husband is, so supportive, that he's like literally laying on the floor to get the best angle of you while you're speaking. Like, I mean, that just goes to show how much Jeremy believes in me, how much he supports me, and I've never once questioned that. So I just am extremely grateful, always, forever will be,
I
for
just
that.
saw a good shot. It was a good shot.
Yeah, well, no big deal, right?
No, it was a good shot. Broadcasting video high school. It's like,
That's true.
hey,
That's true.
it's like, hey,
You
why
got the
not?
skills. You got the
Yeah,
skills.
I was like,
But yeah, I think that just goes to show, that's just one of many examples of how truly supportive, he is of me. And, there are other examples of me and the support that I've given him. There are things we won't go into today, and maybe down the road there will be a time for us to do that. But over the past 6 months, it's been right. Over the past 6 months, Jeremy knows I've been there for him. The roughest days, the days where, I wasn't sure that I could make it through with him, and he wasn't sure that he could make it through. We've made it through, and he is in a much better place than he was 6 months ago, and it's just really cool to see him in this new light, in this this fully exposed Jeremy of who he really is, because of what he's been able to let go over the past 6 months. And so it's been incredible to watch him too, and to support him along that path and along this ever continuing journey that he's on. So yeah, I think that is huge. But I guess the other thing I want to ask you is like, are there times, or how do you feel? How do you manage the your thoughts and emotions of when those days when you may think that like, wow, she's doing like so much stuff, like when is there going to be time for me and her? Like, how do you thought process that? How do you manage your emotions and such?
Probably a while back, it would have been like, no time for me. Like, whatever, can't do this. Just give her cold shoulder, move on. Now it's more like, I don't think like that. I think more in the sense of, is she okay? Is she burning herself out? I look out more for the sense of, she doing too much? And if not, is she okay?
Mhm.
That's really where my mind goes. Like, I know right now you're doing a lot of tutoring, and I think I even said to you on Tuesday, I was like, you don't have to do this.
Mhm.
We will be okay. And
Yep.
you're like, you don't think they'll be mad if I take today off? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I said, you're an adult. I said, if anything, you can try to just, you need time for yourself.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even asking for time for me on that day. That was
Yeah.
me more saying time for you.
Yeah.
And it's just, it hits a point where I am fully aware that there will always be time for us.
Mhm.
I am not at all concerned about that.
Mhm.
I am more concerned about making sure you are okay, because that is
Yeah.
my concern as your number one supporter.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I am doing a lot and I love it. However, just like anyone, there are times, especially me as a woman, there are times during the month where I feel like, oh, is Riley gassing over there?
She just tooted.
There are times during the month where I have less energy, right? So sometimes I do have to, fix my schedule and to um manage some of my commitments, so to speak. And that is just what I've learned, I have to do. And um so yeah, but I appreciate that, Jeremy, that the change for me has been night and day in terms of what I've seen from Jeremy, how he's responded to what I do throughout the school year, as well as what I'm doing in the summer. um a lot of it has to do with just these past 6 months, the changes he's made, because there was a lot of rigidity between the two of us prior to that. And like I said, it's like the full on Jeremy, the one that I absolutely adore and love and have always adored and loved, is like 100% there now. And that's been incredible for our relationship. I know that no relationship is perfect. I'm not the first to say that. We all know that everybody has their struggles out there, including us. That's why I wanted to bring Jeremy on, to show that, like, hey, we're not like this like power couple, if you will, that like has everything put together and is like everything's just perfect, because that's not us. That never will be us. And there's no one out there that is perfect in their relationship. But what
And
I
if they are,
can
they're lying.
yeah, but what I can say is that Jeremy and I value the communication piece so much more than we ever did. I would say since we had that the couples counseling, that was really like one of my biggest takeaways from that was how instrumental our communication has to be in order for us to be a successful unit. And so I think, just in the past year, I think it's been about a year since Jeremy, you've been on the podcast last, we've made some incredible strides in strengthening our relationship even more than it was since that time.
I feel like, because the couples counseling was about 2.5, 3 years ago. We took the lessons, but we didn't really put them into action. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, but at least you can still take what you learned and you didn't forget it. And that's something that is really critical to still keeping something special going.
Yeah. So this was, like I said, this was just really a candid, casual conversation with Jeremy. I hope that this resonates with you. I hope that you can see maybe some of us within you and your relationship. And just know that, relationships with your significant other are just as much part of your health and healing journey as your own physical vessel, right? And so that's again why this is so apt to the podcast. It's so important to bring Jeremy in from time to time, because I know you love him. I know you love seeing him on my stories when he occasionally pops up when we dance together. And he is an important part of my life, as he should be. And so I'm just so very grateful, Jeremy, that you were able to take time out of your day-to-day to come on. I know you're still getting over kind of a little cold. And so I appreciate you coming on and being willing to chat with the listeners and viewers. And
Riley came too.
Riley came and Riker came, and Lily's doing her thing out on the couch.
Lily always needs her space.
That's right. Lily is a little loner lady, but we love her.
Yeah.
But thank you again so much for listening. If you've got any questions for us, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach out to me in the show notes. There's a whole bunch of ways for you to connect with me, that. And if you want to connect with Jeremy, I can also get you in touch with him too. If your significant other wants to chat with Jeremy just about anything and everything, Jeremy would be more than willing to do that, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you so much. And I will chat with you next week.